What's happening right now in India shows us that this is not over yet. What could possibly occur in the future here is catastrophic. So stick around for the rest of the video. We're going to talk about what's going on in India and why we need to actually pay attention to it right now in case something was to come back this way. Hey everybody, it's Magic Prepper, and today we're talking about what is happening in India and why it matters to you in the sense of preparedness. Look, a lot of things have changed since last year at the start of the pandemic, and we have to keep in mind that just because things didn't unfold the way they were reported on originally doesn't mean we shouldn't care about what's happening, because things can change quickly. And we have to understand that because of previous events, what could occur in the future could be more catastrophic than what we've even seen before. So make sure you're staying prepared and make sure you're ahead of what's happening out there. And if you want to do your own research, I implore you to. But if you want to try to stay ahead of the game and you want to worry about things that are going on around the world in order to be better prepared for yourself and your family, then hit the subscribe button below, because we got to keep talking about these things, because regardless of whether or not they actually turn into something bigger and more destructive, we have to prepare for it anyway, just in case. So, in India, over 1 in 3 cases being reported right now of the pandemic worldwide are in India, okay? So understand that 33% of the entire world's new cases are just in one country. Now, just recently they had over 400,000 new cases reported in a single day. That's the highest on record since the start of the pandemic for any singular country. The highest the US had at one point was about 300,000. So keep that in mind. Yes, India has a higher population, much more dense, and it has lower living conditions. So a lot of those factors apply to why this is happening. But really what we need to pay attention to, and what you need to be aware of the most, is why some of this is occurring suddenly now, and why this is only their second wave when our next one would technically be our fourth, okay? So there's 2 newer variants in India right now that are causing most of these problems, okay? The UK variant, the B117, is very contagious and aggressive, and it is definitely about 80% of the reported cases in Punjab right now. So what we're seeing is that British variant is starting to take control and take dominance. And in fact, it's the most dominant strain in America right now as well. And it even has a higher chance of affecting children than previous strains from before. So keep that in mind, because this thing is mutating and changing and becoming more aggressive and becoming more contagious and affecting people it might not have affected before. Now, there's another India variant that's also ravaging their country right now that isn't necessarily as well known as the UK variant, but it's starting to cause some problems, and that is the B1617 variant, okay? And it has multiple sublineages of different mutations. And what that means is that it is starting to spawn other forms of itself, I guess is the best way to say that. And it has a chance of mutating into something even more aggressive or more fatal. And that's what we need to watch out for, because what's happening in India right now is that it's a spawning ground for more and more mutations to take hold and eventually find the one that works the best and is the most effective. And that's what we have to really be concerned about, and that's what could easily cause a catastrophe here in the future, okay? So understand, with what happened last year and with the numbers and the statistics that came out around the original onslaught of the pandemic, we all know that a lot of hype was put into it, and a lot of us have gotten to the point where we're not as concerned about it as we ever were before, okay? And a lot of people are back to their day-to-day normal lives, and a lot of people are refusing to even comply with the most simple guidelines because they've gotten tired of it. They've grown accustomed to just saying no, and people are just back to their lifestyle, which makes 100% sense, because people had to get back to work, pay their bills, they had to stop getting evicted and everything else that's been happening. And trust me, that's still happening. Whether or not the media is reporting on these things right now doesn't mean they're not in existence, and they definitely are. But keep in mind that most people in this country especially have decided to try to move on from this whole situation. What that means is that when these variants from other countries like India make their way back around to the US, the guard is let down. People will not come back to compliance the same way as they had before. The government here, back in March and April of 2020 decided to be aggressive with some of their moves. And everybody at the time said, all right, I see what's happening here and let's give it a shot. Now, because of what is going on around the world, people aren't going to go ahead and just go back into that now. And you can see that in Europe all over the place where protests are spawning due to new lockdowns. And people are saying no, and there's actually riots happening in the streets over these lockdowns. Don't worry about it. It's not going to be reported on very easily, but it is out there and you can find the information, I promise. So, what does this mean? Well, the reason this could be so catastrophic is for two reasons. One is, of course, economically. We could see all of this happening in India. These new variants come out, they're more aggressive, they're more fatal. Who knows what could eventually come out of there? And the new administration in place is not the same as the one that was in place when the original onslaught of the pandemic began. So their new guidelines, restrictions, mandates, whatever it is they might try to put out there would most likely be more aggressive and less friendly to the economy. That being said, people might not comply, but the ones who do are going to go back into that mode of hurting the economy once again because that's what's being mandated. And for some people, and in some people's defense, listening to those people in leadership roles is what they've been taught to do their entire life. So of course they're going to do that. It doesn't make them a bad person. It makes them want to be a good person, if you understand what I'm trying to say. So here's what's likely to occur for the other thing, which is the actual health and physical situation revolving around new variants, okay? The economy, of course, could be hurt again and make us go even faster into oblivion, which we're on our way to anyway. But what could happen with a new variant that's more contagious, more fatal, and has a higher rate of infection is that we're going to see a lot more fatalities and a lot more people hospitalized and a lot more shortages in the sense of medical care due to that new variant because people are not going to comply. And it's because the government put a little bit too much on it last time around, and people like you and I are out doing our daily lives and living our lives of not being in fear, but at some point that could backfire on both you and I. It's not just you, it's me too. We're all out there still working, going to the store, getting things done, and doing what we got to do in order to live our lives. So keep this in mind because as someone who wants to be prepared and as a prepper, it is up to you to make sure you make the best decisions for you and your family, regardless of what some administration tells you, regardless of what the CDC is saying, and regardless as to what the news is saying, and regardless as to what your best friend is saying. Because listen, something that we need to be very clear about and very honest about is that just because your friend read a meme on Facebook about how wearing this or doing that or acting in this way doesn't do anything and has a better chance of getting hit by an asteroid or struck by lightning than actually dying from one of these variants, doesn't mean it's true and doesn't mean it's what you should listen to as your prime source of information. You should take precautions that you see fit for your family and only based off the information that you yourself have found and researched and learned from, okay? Keep that in mind. This PPE here on the table, this could come in handy one day and save my life. Do I wear it all over the place? No, I don't. But is it something that you should probably have to make sure that you can protect yourself and your family if these variants get out of control, which is definitely possible? Please admit that this is actually a possibility and not just write it off because of what happened during the last variant during last year that did not have the same effects that everybody thought it was going to. Don't let that put you into complacency. Don't let that make you comfortable. Understand that this could get much worse, and India is a perfect place for this virus to continue to mutate until it finds a perfect hold on people like you and I, and we're not ready for it. So, will there be a fourth wave in the United States? According to medical experts out there, here's what would cause a fourth wave in the United States, okay? Guidelines not being followed. Okay, we all know they're not going to be followed, okay? We know some people will, but we know for the most part, they won't be followed. Because you know what? I'll tell you one thing. I'm in restrooms in a public vicinity very often because of my work. And I will say that I have seen a number of people wearing masks in the bathroom, but not wash their hands. So keep that in mind because even the most simple procedure of washing your hands can't even happen. So guidelines won't be followed. But that's one of the reasons why there will be a fourth wave, okay? So the next reason is because all of the immunity boosters that they're trying to put out there, if you know the word I'm trying to say, if they're not dispersed correctly or in enough quantity, then there will be a fourth wave. Okay, well, we already know there's shortages on those, expected through July. So without enough of them, fourth wave, okay? And then the last thing, which should interest you because of India, poor countries lose control, okay? Spawn mutations, and those make it to the US. That could make a fourth wave. Well, interesting that that's exactly what's happening in India right now. So, will there be a fourth wave? You can almost guarantee it because it's being telegraphed to you by people in the medical community and by the media saying, well, if these things happen, there's going to be a fourth wave. And they're already happening. They know they're already happening and they know they're going to happen. And you and I both know as well that these things are going to happen. So be prepared for it because the fourth wave, whether or not it wrecks us more economically or in the sense of physically, of actually hurting our bodies and possibly killing us, whether or not it doesn't do either of those things, you should be prepared for it. Because some of these variants that could come out of places like India could eventually actually be the one that everybody talked about the original pandemic being back in 2020. And at that point, are you going to actually take it head on like you would have a year ago? Please be honest with yourself, look yourself in the mirror, and think about what it is you'd have to do to respond to something like that, regardless of friends, family, co-workers, media, medical professionals, CDC, all those things. Take all of the information you can, digest it the best you can, and make the best decisions for you and your family, and have ways to protect yourself in case that stuff actually occurs. So I wanted to get this out there. I wanted to tell you why this whole India situation is important and what you need to learn from it and how you need to understand that this fourth wave thing is really going to happen, and this new administration in town are going to handle it much differently than the last one. So if you have anything else to add about what's going on in India right now, leave it in the comments below. But besides that, that's going to be it for Magic Prep.